interesting experience. That being, of course, joining the online community of Second Life. Where to begin? I think I'm going to start off with point two first, because I can very honestly say that I have never really experienced something that caught my attention in such a weird way. Because, to be honest, at first I didn't really think that I was gonna like it all that much. I've had experience with semi-virtual environments, but those aren't anywhere compared to the level achieved by Second Life in terms of creating both an environment that's different and has a little bit of something for everybody. When I first started playing, it was on a very surface level, I guess. Going up to random people, chatting, where are you from? How long have you been on Second Life? Things like that. Actually, this is a good transition to point one, being that me as a musician, I wanted to find something that catered to me specifically. So I figured if Second Life really does have something for everybody, it would have something for somebody like me. And sure enough, it did. So my main quest in the game was to find a medium in which I could play my music. So I started joining some groups, mostly busking groups, open mic groups, and stuff like that. But it didn't really come to full fruition until only a couple days ago, actually, when I went to an open mic and started playing some of my music. Now, it's interesting because I figured that, playing music through an avatar would somehow be easier than playing in real life, but as I played, I found myself getting nervous just like I would in front of a real audience. It was a strange experience simply for the fact that even though these aren't people that I'm face to face with, nor people that I would most likely ever see again, seeing as the expanse of Second Life is gigantic, I still found myself getting nervous, which will leave me into point three, being that in a very strange way to me, being able to play my music in front of real people via this virtual reality was something that I never experienced before. Not to say that it was bad, it was just different. And I found myself having the same kind of social anxieties that I would have playing in real life, which I found very interesting. Also, another point to mention was I went to this nightclub, a blues bar, I should say, called Bogart's. And I arrived wearing my character's Ghostbusters t shirt, jeans, and some Converse chucks. And I walked through the door, and the hostess greeted me, saying, "Oh, you must be new here. This is formal attire only." At which point, I said, "Really? I don't have any formal attire." And it was at that very moment where I suddenly became very aware of how I was dressed compared to people who were dressed much differently around me. And I guess that kind of brings us to Cooley's Looking Glass self, because in that moment, no one was necessarily being rude to me, but the fact in knowing that I was very underdressed for the social situation made me quite uncomfortable. It opened my eyes a little bit into how it's not necessarily how people treat you, but it's how you think they think of you, which is interesting, of course. Another thing that really interested me actually is the whole economy of Second Life, being that you can get jobs, or actually, when I played my music, I was getting tipped money, which was something that was super strange for me. It was just a sense of satisfaction that you feel like you can only achieve in real life, being passed through a virtual medium, that I can honestly say that I never would have even considered. But I think it's time to move on to the next point. So, of course, I, as a male, played my first half of Second Life as a male, I found that I was the one making most interactions with people as opposed to people making interactions with me. Not to say that people didn't try to make interactions with me. As a matter of fact, the people that I made the deeper connections with were the ones who approached me first. Let's see, point 5. Of course, I've already mentioned some of my offline experiences compared to my online experience, especially dealing with music, but I felt like in order to do this right, I had to really delve into what it was to go to the dark side of Second Life. And so I went into the search, I clicked the little A check mark. I did some exploring. Of course, being the nature of the internet, there were some weird things to come about. One in particular involving some furries. Enough said. But of course, I felt very bashful in their presence. Not to say that it's anything particularly wrong. If that's what you're into, that's what you're into. Just for me, I felt kind of awkward being there. And it's very interesting to see that Second Life has such a thriving business based upon vocal sex. Actually, one of the open mics that I went to was at Kinky's Adult Entertainment Simulator. That was actually probably my first experience going into the dark Second Life. I was trying to do my thing, and then in the background you can hear, "Give me some of that dick." Very interesting, not to say less, but sometimes you have to go to the dark side to realize what it is. And in those situations, I do feel a little bit awkward, but it's not my place to judge. But coming into point 6, I would say that my experiences doing these open mics have definitely encouraged me to push myself in terms of my self-confidence when it comes to my art, simply for the fact that what's the difference between me playing for a bunch of avatars whom I may never see again and me playing for a bunch of people that I'll never see again? And so it's really taught me a lot about myself and how, my brain processes anxieties and all this stuff and social awkwardness, and I think it's kind of a proving ground, really, in a roundabout sort of way, and how I could potentially act in the real world. Moving on to point 7, which all these points are kind of blending together, but Second Life has really taught me something about myself and how lots of interactions can be very superficial, small talk. Do you really care about what the person says? Not really. But maybe they can be a little bit deeper than that. And of course, online, people do have a tendency to divulge a little bit more of themselves just based on anonymity. But it shouldn't be that way. Why can't we do the same in real life? In my own personal experience, I feel like I could change that about myself. Not being so socially awkward sometimes, managing my anxiety a little bit better. Because in the end, what is it that makes an interaction real? Is it being face to face with somebody, seeing them eye to eye? It's really made me rethink what it is to interact with other people and to what level. I remember after the first show I did in front of actual people, it wasn't many, it was 4 or 5 people, but they were all so gracious and they were so appreciative of me playing my music, and likewise I was appreciative of them for enjoying. And afterwards I started talking to them, and these were the real people. They weren't afraid to be who they were. And I liked that. I liked it a lot. I would say that they're currently my core group of SL friends. Simply for the fact that, they were the ones who took me under their wing and kind of showed me the ropes. I'm not sure if you knew, but there is a much better viewer for Second Life called Firestorm. So much better. And that's something that I would have found out without the help of these people. I feel like it's really taught me something different in terms of what it means to be a human interacting with other humans. And even if it's just an avatar, is that really to say that it's not a real interaction? I don't know. Real quick, I just wanted to give a shout out to the crew. We got Nat, Cece, Candy, Nina, Vinolin. Thank you guys so much for your help. Well, that's all for now. So, see you next time.